Yes, folks, hello, welcome once again to MoDXtra Games and Collectibles. I'm Chris, this is my channel. Absolute pleasure to have you with me here today. And it's time for another kind of loosey-goosey thought of the day, straight to camera. And what I'd like to talk about in this installment is the recent news around Todd McFarlane, McFarlane Toys, DC Multiverse Toys, and the fact that they're going to be doing figures up until the end of 2026. Now, I've got some thoughts on that, but to start with, let's just make sure everybody's up to speed and on the same page with regards to the news. So during New York Comic Con, the Adventures in Collecting podcast did an interview with Todd in like some canteen area type thing. And during that interview with Todd, Todd said that they were licensed to do figures up until the end of 2026, which seemed a little bit counter to the press release that Mattel put out earlier this year. In the new year or a bit later, January, February time. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was earlier this year because their press release said that they were going to start doing DC products from the middle of 2026. Further to that, just incidentally in the interview, Todd said, and I quote, "We're talking with Warner Brothers and Mattel to see if we can have our fingerprints on DC somewhere." You know, take that, to mean whatever. But he also then went on to talk about, so we've got a limited amount of time. We're running out the clock. We need to make some decisions about which figures, which characters we're going to do to wrap up the line, etc., etc. And that was kind of the extent of it. So, of course, folks out and about on the socials, your Reddit, your Instagrams, your Facebooks, etc., are all a bit like, what's he on about? Because, the Mattel press release said the middle of 2026. Then, just 2 days ago, at the time of recording right now, probably 3 days ago by the time I edit and put it out, but Toy News International put an article out, only a very short article, kind of reiterating what I've just said. Todd's done an interview. This is what he said. This was counter or a bit confusing against the press release that we saw from Mattel. And they said, we've done some digging, which I'll come back to in a minute. We've done some digging, and we can now tell you that Mattel's plans are to do kid-friendly DC toy lines in mid-2026, and that they'll do adult-orientated action figure collectible targeted stuff at the end of 2026 into 2027. And then the Toy News International guys went on to state that what this possibly means is that the Spin Masters license for the child-targeted audience, child demo stuff, finishes mid-2026, and the McFarlane license wraps up at the end of 2026. So that press release, Mattel were making no distinction between those various demographics, those different types of audiences that would be reading that press release and filling in the gaps, which, to be fair, is a reasonable speculation. I can't counter that, but that would seem to make some sort of sense. We'll probably never find out what the finer detail of that is behind the scenes. There is some part of me that's a little bit skeptical around the Toy News International article, only in the sense of that, it's a fan site. It's not sort of journalistically peer-reviewed or anything. So we've done some digging with no kind of reference to where the source has come from, the reliability of the source, where they found this information out. Have they just gone to McFarlane Toys and just got confirmation of Todd's comments from the Adventures in Collecting podcast interview, for example? And I know that Todd is prone to a bit of embellishment and exaggeration at times, but I don't think the statement, we've got until the end of 2026. And he did also say in that interview, if you watch it, in fact, just as a quick side note, I'll put a link to that very interview down below in the comments so you can go and watch it for yourself. But he was saying about, obviously it takes time for things to transition and change hands. There's a lead-in time for the new license holder to start preparing and developing their product, etc., etc. And, that all adds up. I've worked in corporate business. I've seen these types of situations before myself with my own eyeballs. So while he's prone to a bit of exaggeration and embellishment, I don't doubt that he's telling the truth, and if he wasn't, it would soon become apparent midway through 2026 what was going on then. It does feel like McFarlane Toys are definitely doing a bit of a rush to the finish line. I've stepped back from McFarlane Toys, which I'll talk about in a minute, but keeping half an eye on what's going on, it seems like the new release, the previews and the announcements it's just relentless. Although actually, now that I've said that out loud, McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse always was a bit relentless in that way, wasn't it? So, okay, there's no source on the Toy News International stuff. We don't know where this digging took place and who they dug with to discover this information, but I've no reason to disbelieve it. I just don't know. I'm just born cynical and skeptical that way, I suppose. So there you go. You're all on the same page as to why this is my thought of the day, because I've obviously watched the video, the Adventures in Collecting podcast's interview with Todd. But the reason I've been following this story so closely and have been sort of keeping an eye out on the DC Multiverse stuff and just DC toys in general is because I was quite excited by the news that McFarlane Toys are losing their license and Mattel are picking it up. Well, certainly excited at the potential and the art of possibility that a new licensor for the adult collecting action figure DC Comics range coming on the horizon. So much so that I've started scripting and planning a video. I've got a little series of kind of looking back, looking forward stuff to do, pretty classic YouTuber stuff in December for the end, to round up 2025 and look forward in 2026. And there it is, folks. There's the script in action. You can, there you go, a little insight into how the sausage is made. That's what a MoDXtra Games and Collectibles script looks like. They're not really scripts, they're just kind of bullet point lists of things I want to talk about. In fact, there's the name of the video I've been preparing, McFarlane Lessons for Mattel. It's a whole thing about, what Mattel can learn from Todd's time with the DC Comics line. And I'm not going to labour the point. I've certainly talked about it before here on the channel. I checked out of DC Multiverse a long time ago. If you look back over my reviews, you'll see there's only a very small handful of figures that I actually picked up. When I did pick them up, I found myself still returning to the same kind of displeasures and stuff. The line was just not for me. The 7-inch scale, the absence of evolution around things like articulation, the kind of money-grubbing, cow-milking attitude or wallet-milking attitude that McFarlane was showing. Not very comprehensive, confusing, red platinum lines, digital, page punches, DC Multiverse, collector's edition, platinum edition, gold label edition, silver label edition, mainline edition, all this stuff going on all the time. And the absence of what I wanted, which was good, classic looking figures. There was just a little bit too much engagement with the more obscure stuff or the things that Todd thought were cool. We were kind of prisoners to what Todd liked and what he thought we should want and the direction we should be going as collectors. And so if you were into that, it worked. If you weren't, like me, it didn't work. That's not to say, though, as a little small print, I don't necessarily think there isn't a space for going for more obscure characters or doing more interesting stuff. I just think it was over-egged. The pudding was far too over-egged. And then Jokerized shit, and then black and whited shit, and then what else? Glow in the dark, and Antarctic frozen and transparent, and all that bollocks. Just, it was exhausting, and I just didn't enjoy collecting the line. So much so, in fact, I've been selling some of my DC Multiverse collection. I've been thinning it down. You can see here over my shoulder, I've got my Frank Quitely Batman and Robin here. That Robin was an arse-ache to get hold of. Another problem with DC Multiverse, just can't get hold of it here in the UK. And when you do get it, you get sent the variant you didn't want, the Chase variant. Anyway, I'm not going to bang on complaining about DC Multiverse. That's kind of not what this video is about, although it sort of is. No, I got them because I like Frank Quitely. That's my Frank Quitely Superman from the previous line. And I've got Frank Quitely Batman and Robins from the black and white blind bag collection. As you can gather, I like Frank Quitely. In fact, I don't know if you can see it with the angle of my camera, but I've got Frank Quitely comics on the wall and Frank Quitely Superman poster on the wall. Anyway, I'm in the weeds, getting back on track. So I've been selling some of my collection. In fact, the sale of some of my DC Multiverse figures have partially funded my trip to the London Comic Con at the end of this year. To be quite frank with you, because I've actually made quite a lot of money on them. They're that difficult to get hold of here in the UK that collectors now who missed figures back then, and for whatever reason I was able to get my hands on them, are willing to pay over the odds. So that secondary market is presently pretty hot right now if you're thinking about getting rid of your DC Multiverse. So the news is a little bit disappointing to me, but only because I am actually really passionate about DC Comics. Again, the graphic novels are over my shoulder, and if you squint, you'll see that there's far more DC stuff in there than there is Marvel stuff. These are kind of like my core collection that I've kept over the years because I've gone digital. So it's disappointment, but only because I'm eager to know and understand what Mattel are planning on doing. What scale are they going to do it in? What are we going to see in terms of, I've actually been looking at like Motu figures and wrestling figures that I've never cast an eye over before in my life, just to get a sense of what might be coming in terms of articulation and scale and sculpting and so on and so forth. And if I'm not going to like what Mattel are doing, I want to know about it. You know what I mean? I want it over and done with. Because I love DC Comics and I want to collect DC Comics lines and I want to collect ones that are done well, But it doesn't really affect me all that much. I'm not buying DC related action figures right now. That's it. I've wrapped up. I'm not doing McFarlane toys. I'm getting rid of stuff. So it's just a longer period of time for me not to be paying attention or collecting DC Comics figures at the end of the day. So it's disappointing, but it's not. It's just, you know, I've got to exercise some patience. And it's not like I haven't got enough occupying my mind. It's not like there's many people watching this channel in particular for my coverage of superhero-related collectibles like DC Multiverse and Marvel Legends, is it? Except for the fact that it's messed up, you know, my plans, my video plans for December this year. I bet you didn't expect that, did you? I bet you didn't expect the fact that I plan my videos sometimes as far in advance as 3 months. I mean, obviously the reviews I can only do when they come, and who knows when the fuck figures are coming. The estimated shipping date is meaningless, isn't it? You know, but yeah, so I was a bit disappointed, but disappointed only because I'm really, really super eager to see what Mattel have got in store for the adult collector lines that they may or may not be doing. You know, the Toy News International reporting hasn't really clarified anything of that. Their digging has only kind of produced clarification on the license lengths. And because it's a part of my life, it's part of my nostalgic collecting habits and behaviors, that I want some DC stuff, you know? So it's disappointing because I'm just in a sense of a holding pattern, or waiting, but, you know, with anticipation and excitement, but also anxiety that it's going to be pants or it's not going to suit me the same way the DC Multiverse isn't suiting me. And, you know, so I just kind of wanted an end to that, like either to wrap up the anxiety or to affirm the joy that the potential for joy that it might bring to me, you know? So in any case, I'll probably hold that video back. I'm not sure what the conclusion of this is, only to say, you know, looks like Todd's doing DC Multiverse for, you know, at least another 15, 16 months now. And he'll probably still never get around to doing, you know, good quality, highly desirable, wanted female characters. What's there to say about that, you know? Still no Black Canary. Still no comic book Poison Ivy. Nobody can get their hands on that Wonder Woman. But to be frank, I know a lot of people want that Wonder Woman. I might sell mine, actually. I bet she'll make a fair penny. But she was a bit shit anyway. You know? Certainly going to hold back that video at the end of the year in any case. But let me know your thoughts. You know, are you feeling the same as I'm feeling? Have you got this kind of mixed emotion, highs and lows thing about the potential of Mattel coming into the line? Were you just hoping that therefore the potential for dread and anxiety, or the potential for joy and excitement, I just need to know which direction I'm going in, you know? Do you feel the same way? Are you not bothered? Yeah, I don't know. It was just, I was thinking about it earlier today, you know, and I'm catching up on some news articles on my RSS feed reader on my iPad, and you know, read that Toy News International article. So in any case, the article and the video that I've referenced will be down in the comments below. Sorry, in the description below. But please do share your comments and what your thoughts are about this new revelation about how long Todd's going to have DC Multiverse. But you've been brought up to speed on the news anyway, if you didn't already know. And that's it. I'm done. I'm just doing that weird fizzle out thing I do at the end of these videos. So thanks for watching. Come back again for another video sometime soon. Have yourself a great day, and you know, I'll catch you next time. All right, take it easy, folks.